I am observing. The eye of the beholder is for focus, for thought. Paying attention in this present moment is to witness the progression of thought. The observer is observing as a process. The observer is also being observed in a feedback loop of perception. The cohesion of it all is the centripetal force of love. This is so that being and observing it all means that love might not go unnoticed or unknown. Welcome to the show. I am observing with Karen, Christy, and Patrick. That's me. Thanks for listening. My observation for this session is titled, I am an Ideomaterial girl. Sort of a riff off of the Madonna song, We're living in a material world and I'm a material girl. Today I'm talking about this word, ideomaterial. I first learned about this word when I was on a forum called the Live Physics Group, internet forum. It was where a group of people got together to study the work of A.R. Borden, who was part of the Life Physics Group, which was pretty much not known at all until A.R. Borden spilled the beans about it. And this group were composed of renegade physicists, primarily, who, whenever there was any written material, would give pseudonyms because they were delving into the deeper regions of the quantum hologram, quantum physics, and getting deeper into the concept of mind over matter or mind is matter or any of those topics that are still considered taboo or questionable or bad science, etc. We have a consensus reality science that is what, you'd normally see. I always say, you normally would see that on PBS. But basically, the science of the masses, the science taught in the schools, the science reported on any scientific show or any scientific commentary in any media outlet. And this particular science is, we like to say, well, that's not mystery, that's science. We like to say that science is the definitive word where there's been an experiment and, under ideal conditions, and here's the conclusions, here's the facts. And people who believe in consensus reality science will actually be quite offended if you question that science is somehow subjective in any way. So they would say that it's objectivity, or this is proven, or this has got facts and studies and statistics. Then if you actually study science, which I did, I took 3.5 years of computer science when I was in college, and I did not finish college. I got a severe disease and a lot of time to think and decided I didn't want to finish my degree. So I began to find out what goes into or what constitutes ideas in science. And I found out it was more affected by politics, whether it be overt governmental politics or policies, affected by corporate influence. So usually if you wanted to fund a scientific study, you would have to go and get funding, and usually that was provided by corporations and foundations who were more particularly wanting the results to fit with consensus reality science, because somebody benefits by that. Somebody benefits by current scientific ideas. And for instance, the most famous study is the study of whether cigarette consumption affects lung cancer disease, and most people, even people who smoke, pretty much know that if they smoke, they're at higher risk for lung cancer. However, the smoking industry lobbied the government with their own studies where they got scientists to study smoking and come up with the opposite results, or saying that smoking in no way at all affects your chances of getting lung cancer. And of course, most people find that laughable, but that really is, truly what was purported for a long time, of course, until the evidence, piled up in just cases. You knew someone in your family who chain smoked for years and got lung cancer. Surprise, surprise, right? It wasn't a surprise. Well, he smoked. That's how that is. So that's kind of a situation, is that the science can be influenced by corporate interests, but it can be also influenced by, the politics of science. And most people don't understand that, basically there's a politics of science that, most ideas aren't allowed to be changed or altered. There's the working model. And even the life physics group physicists compared their Ideomaterial model with the working model. And the working models, particle physics and just regular physics you're taught in school. And the idea is that there's, atoms, there's subquantum or things smaller than atoms, there's molecules which make up compounds, which make up, pretty much everything material. And the alternative fringe, whatever, renegade, quantum, whatever science you want to call it, under many names, is the idea that the underlying, structure of the universe isn't particles at all. It's energy. And so that's, and then further studies like the double slit experiment, you can look that up, it's very interesting, start to show that the observer or mind or consciousness can affect the quality of the energy and affect the results. So this is, considered fringe, considered not real, considered bad science, whatever, because it gets really scary. I mean, the idea that things that we consider immutable, are actually malleable. So things that we think of as solid and unchanging are in fact changing all the time, which is true. If I've got a table here and I knock my fingers on the table, that's matter, but it's actually going through a change already. I mean, entropy, which is one of the, physical laws, is working on it. Eventually that table's going to break down and become, dust, basically, eventually, give a few 100,000 years, So that is, all under debate. But what was going on in the politics of science is that these physicists who wanted to explore other ideas or energy physics were forced to do their work, behind the scenes to get alternative funding. They didn't want their names connected with the studies of the life physics group because this is the politics, is that if you step outside the consensus reality science, that you would lose your job. And so there was a renegade physicist whose nickname was A.R. Borden, and he began to try to share his information with whoever would listen. As it so happens, the life physics group worked with physicists, but it also, one of the things that made it very controversial is it worked with intuitives. It worked with remote viewing intuitives, remote sensing intuitives, and empaths to basically go and look at the substructure of the universe through the eyes of remote viewing and remote sensing, and thereby come up with their own working model. Well, they called the regular science ones a standard model, and there's the working model. My bad, but yeah, that's it. Their working model had a completely different framework, and it was different levels of how thought, which is energy, right? Thoughts is energy. Consciousness is the medium of thought, right? Starts from an idea and becomes a material thing. And they identified seven different layers, levels of manifestation of how thought becomes things. And of course, very controversial. So instead of, thinking of atoms, it becomes molecules, compounds, etc., up to, the galaxy. So you scale it all the way up to the universe, as being interconnected things, right? You're going to start with the potential of thought, what a thought could be, an idea becomes, eventually goes through these 7 layers and becomes a thing. And so that's where you get the word ideo, and the word ideomaterial, you get ideo, which means idea or thought. And then material, of course, then the thing manifests or comes into our material reality. And so when this renegade gentleman, Dr. Borden, goes out, he just finds all of these diverse group of people to share this information with and share the material with. And I'm one of those people, and I am not a scientist. I'm maybe a mystical scientist, or somebody who, and this was defined by one of their studies, as a mystical scientist, somebody who uses esoteric tools or thinking or thought or observation or just the perspective of a human life to try to understand the world. And that really rubs the fur the wrong way on a lot of scientific-minded people. They distrust the human mind. They think the human mind is fraught with, biases and misinformation and disinformation and emotional thinking and all those mushy kinds of things that assault the citadels of science every day. Ignorance, right? Of course that's not that way. That's not real science. Well, the fact of the matter is the humanity, or a single human, or me, right? I'm a human being. I can only know the world from my own perspective. And this is something I've given a lot of thought to and hope to talk about. But I can only understand my life from a human life. And I can read a book about science, or I can have someone tell me a different idea of their philosophy or whatever. But unless I can relate to it from my own perspective, I really can't connect with it. And this is this debate of, can a mere human being understand the world adequately? Well, we only have our instrument, right? Our own human instrument. We only have our own human mind of consciousness. With which to view everything. And it's only important to the point of where it applies to us. So if I jump off a cliff and the law of gravity pulls me down to my death on the jagged rocks, then, that's when the law or the concept or the idea of the law of gravity is going to impact me very personally, But if it's some other law or idea or concept, and it has absolutely nothing to do with me, I could read about it, I could think it's interesting, but it really isn't pertaining to me. So that personal perspective is all we really have. And so one of the things I admire, I consider A.R. Borden a mentor, a very difficult one along the lines of a Zen master, very confusing, very difficult, very, it was complex to be in a working relationship with A.R. Borden, as many people who knew him will attest. And you get as many different opinions of him as who you talk to, honestly. But I think his general, intention was he had come into all this information. He disagreed with the idea that the average person should not be told about it, and therefore just grabbed whatever he had and gave it to whoever he could. And I have to say that later on, those of us who were his friends or students or associates, I don't know what you call it, we were all stuck with different parts of the puzzle, and we've all been getting together in various ways to discuss what did we learn, what was this all about. And it's compelling material and not very